Miss Pillinger was not entirely sorry to obey the request. Mr. Meggs's sudden fury had startled and frightened her. So long as she could end the scene victorious, she was anxious to withdraw. "Yes, I will go," she said with dignity as she opened the door. "Now that you have revealed yourself in your true colours, Mr. Meggs, this house is no fit place for a wor—" She caught her employer's eye and vanished hastily. Mr. Meggs paced the room in a ferment. He had been shaken to his core by the scene. He boiled with indignation. That his kind thought should have been so misinterpreted, it was too much. Of all ungrateful worlds, this world was the most. He stopped suddenly in his stride, partly because his shin had struck a chair, partly because an idea had struck his mind. Hopping madly, he added one more parallel between himself and Hamlet by soliloquizing aloud. "I'll be hanged if I commit suicide," he yelled. And as he spoke the words, a curious peace fell on him, as on a man who was awakened from a nightmare. He sat down at the desk. What an idiot he had been ever to contemplate self-destruction! What could have induced him to do it? By his own hand to remove himself, merely in order that a pack of ungrateful brutes might wallow in his money? It was the scheme of a perfect fool. He wouldn't commit suicide, not if he knew it. He would stick on and laugh at them. And if he did have an occasional pain inside, what of that? Napoleon had them, and look at him. He would be blowed if he committed suicide. With the fire of a new resolve lighting up his eyes, he turned to seize the 6 letters and rifle them of their contents. They were gone. It took Mr. Meggs perhaps 30 seconds to recollect where they had gone to, and then it all came back to him. He had given them to the demon Pillinger, and if he did not overtake her and get them back, she would mail them. Of all the mixed thoughts which seethed in Mr. Meggs's mind at that moment, easily the most prominent was the reflection that from his front door to the post office was a walk of less than 5 minutes. Miss Pillinger walked down the sleepy street in the June sunshine, boiling, as Mr. Meggs had done, with indignation. She, too, had been shaken to the core. It was her intention to fulfill her duty by posting the letters which had been entrusted to her, and then to quit forever the service of one who, for 6 years, a model employer, had at last forgotten himself and showed his true nature. Her meditations were interrupted by a hoarse shout in her rear, and, turning, she perceived the model employer running rapidly towards her. His face was scarlet, his eyes were wild, and he wore no hat. Miss Pillinger's mind worked swiftly. She took in the situation in a flash. Unrequited, guilty love had sapped Mr. Meggs's reason, and she was to be the victim of his fury. She had read of scores of similar cases in the newspapers. How little she had ever imagined that she would be the heroine of one of these dramas of passion. She looked for one brief instant up and down the street. Nobody was in sight. With a loud cry she began to run. "Stop!" It was the fierce voice of her pursuer. Miss Pillinger increased to 3rd speed. As she did so, she had a vision of headlines. "Stop!" roared Mr. Meggs. "Unrequited passion made this man murderer," thought Miss Pillinger. "Stop!" "Crazed with love, he slays beautiful blonde," flashed out in letters of crimson on the back of Miss Pillinger's mind. "Stop!" "Spurned, he stabs her thrice." To touch the ground at intervals of 20 yards or so, that was the ideal she strove for. She addressed herself to it with all the strength of her powerful mind. In London, New York, Paris, and other cities where life is brisk, the spectacle of a hatless gentleman with a purple face pursuing his secretary through the streets at a rapid gallop would, of course, have excited little, if any, remark. But in Mr. Meggs's hometown events were of rarer occurrence. The last milestone in the history of his native place had been the visit, 2 years before, of Bingley's stupendous circus, which had paraded along the main street on its way to the next town, while zealous members of its staff visited the back premises of the houses and removed all the washing from the lines. Since then, deep peace had reigned. Gradually, therefore, as the chase warmed up, citizens of all shapes and sizes began to assemble. Miss Pillinger's screams and the general appearance of Mr. Meggs gave food for thought. Having brooded over the situation, they decided at length to take a hand, with the result that, as Mr. Meggs's grasp fell upon Miss Pillinger, the grasp of several of his fellow townsmen fell upon him. "Save me," said Miss Pillinger. Mr. Meggs pointed speechlessly to the letters, which she still grasped in her right hand. He had taken practically no exercise for 20 years, and the pace had told upon him. Constable Gooch, guardian of the town's welfare, tightened his hold on Mr. Meggs's arm and desired explanations. He was going to murder me," said Miss Pillinger. "Kill him," advised an austere bystander. "What do you mean you are going to murder the lady?" inquired Constable Gooch. Mr. Meggs found speech. I only wanted those letters." "What for?" "They're mine." "You charge her with stealing 'em?" "He gave them me to post with his own hands," cried Miss Pillinger. "I know I did, but I want them back." By this time the constable, though age had to some extent dimmed his sight, had recognized, beneath the perspiration, features which, though they were distorted, were nevertheless those of one whom he respected as a leading citizen. "Why, Mr. Meggs," he said. This identification by one in authority calmed, if it a little disappointed, the crowd. What it was they did not know, but it was apparently not a murder, and they began to drift off. "Why don't you give Mr. Meggs his letters when he asks you, ma'am?" said the constable. Miss Pillinger drew herself up haughtily. "Here are your letters, Mr. Meggs. I hope we shall never meet again." Mr. Meggs nodded. That was his view, too. All things worked together for good. The following morning Mr. Meggs awoke from a dreamless sleep with a feeling that some curious change had taken place in him. He was abominably stiff, and to move his limbs was pain, but down in the center of his being there was a novel sensation of lightness. He could have declared that he was happy. Wincing, he dragged himself out of bed and limped to the window. He threw it open. It was a perfect morning. A cool breeze smote his face, bringing with it pleasant scents and the soothing sound of God's creatures beginning a new day. An astounding thought struck him. "Why, I feel well." Then another. "It must have been the exercise I took yesterday. By George, I'll do it regularly." He drank in the air luxuriously. Inside him, the wildcat gave him a sudden claw, but it was a half-hearted effort, the effort of one who knows that he is beaten. Mr. Meggs was so absorbed in his thoughts that he did not even notice it. "London," he was saying to himself, "one of these physical culture places. comparatively young man, put myself in their hands. Mild, regular exercise." He limped to the bathroom. End of A Sea of Troubles by P. G. Wodehouse. This recording is in the public domain.